Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the April 2022 meeting of the Montgomery County Civic Federation. My name is Alan Bowser. I'm president of MCCEF. Thank you all for joining us on this Monday evening. We have some association business to take care of before we hear our guest this evening. The first thing we do is we move the approval of the agenda for this meeting. Does somebody want to move the approval?
I'll move.
It's been so moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. The agenda is on page 2 of the Civic Federation newsletter. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. The next order of business is approval of this evening's agenda. You can find this, I'm in this evening's minutes. The minutes of the March 14th meeting are on page 23 of the April newsletter. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting?
Minutes.
The minutes, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the March meeting? It's been moved, it's been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The minutes of the March 14th MCCF meeting have been approved. Thank you all for that. Treasurer's report, Jerry Garson.
In the last 30 days, we're on a fiscal year starting July 1st to April 11th. We've had $50 worth of dues in the last 30 days. And so far, our dues collection has been $1,200. Our expenses have been $1,437, giving us a net deficit of $237. And our bank balance is $8,752. For any questions, contact me later.
Thank you very much. Jerry, any questions about the treasurer's report? Hearing none, we'll move on. This is the time of the meeting. We will entertain some brief announcements. If you have any announcements, raise your hand. I could see you waving, but you can also use the raise hand function, which is in the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. Let me make a couple of announcements. I want to thank Gordy Brennan from the Montgomery County Taxpayers League for his article in the April newsletter. Thank you, Gordy, wherever you are. I also want to thank Jackie Boko for her work in putting together the Montgomery County Federation News. So we couldn't do it without her, and she's been very patient for all of us. I want to thank Jerry Garson for organizing this program. I want to call your attention to an issue that the Civic Federation has been very supportive of, and that's the prospective funding for the Office of the People's Counsel, which is included in the county executive's recommended FY23 operating budget. Want to remind you that my letter to the council president is printed in the newsletter. Thank you for doing that, Jackie. There'll be public hearings coming up next week, April 19th and 20th. There will be public hearings in the afternoon, in the evening. I am going to testify for the Civic Federation in support of the Office of the People's Counsel. If you haven't signed up, it's all waiting list right now, but you can submit testimony to the county council for its consideration. So looking forward to the council passing. I'm optimistic the council is going to pass the funding, the modest funding for the Office of the People's Counsel. Anybody have any other announcements they'd like to make for the good of the order? Seeing none, then let's get right on with tonight's program, and let me turn it over to Jerry Garson.
I would like to welcome Rich Madaleno, the Montgomery County's Chief Administrative Officer. Before joining the Montgomery County government, he was a member of the New Maryland State Senate. Rich had, before becoming the Chief Administrative Officer, was the Director of Office of Management and Budget for Montgomery County. He's also been considered an expert on the Maryland budgets. I'm sure that he probably is the only one who's read almost the entire budget book. It's 1 3/4 inches thick, And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Rich Madaleno.
Thank you, Jerry, very much. Thank you, Alan. I'm going to try to share my screen. Hopefully you're seeing this nice PowerPoint presentation. Yes, Alan? Good. Good. All right. Well, thank you all very much for having me. Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm going to go over the county executive's recommended budget. As you heard from Alan, the public hearings are coming up next week before the county council. The general open public hearings on all are any and all parts of the county budget. And then, of course, the council will have committee work sessions where they'll parse out the budget by department to the various committees on the council. So I want to start with this simple chart, and I will happily send this PowerPoint presentation to whoever you want afterwards, so that you can have a copy of it and share it with your members. Every other year in an odd numbered year, the county does a community survey. We use a firm that just specializes in doing these sorts of community surveys around the country. So they do hundreds of jurisdictions around the country. We try to do it in the spring of an even numbered year. Of course, the spring of 21 we thought was overloaded with COVID, so we waited until the fall and very nicely put out the survey in the mail. So it arrived perfectly timed with Omicron. So of course, we were still surveying in the middle of the pandemic, but these are the numbers that came out even with everything that was going on. That 90% of the respondents this is the scientific sample, 90% of the respondents said Montgomery County was an excellent or good place to live. The overall quality of life, 86%. And you can see the trend lines over the last several years, very high, and in line, or if not above, where we've been over the last few years. So even in the middle of the pandemic, people felt good about Montgomery County. The little mention of the benchmark, we benchmark ourselves against a bunch of other communities that also do the survey. So these are our quote unquote, our peer group. And so we are very, very much in line with the other communities. How did people feel about the quality of services? 77% said excellent or good. That's a slight drop off, not bad in the middle of a pandemic. And then of course, I thought this was interesting how people feel about the federal government. Not nearly as good as Montgomery County, but still an improvement. So a little bit about the challenges we face in our community. Clearly, we've all lived through this. The 2 years of COVID, the various states of emergency, all of the cases and the unfortunate deaths in our community as a result of COVID, but also, this has put a lot of strain on resources and our government programs, because people turned to us for assistance, whether it was individuals, families, businesses, landlords. Across the board, we had to step up and provide services and provide even more services as even more people needed public assistance. Of course, the community has grappled with almost a full year of virtual learning and how that impacted all levels of education. And we're still dealing with the repercussions of the shifting labor market, of supply chain disruptions and what it's doing to the price of commodities, and inflation, and how that's impacting some of the goods that we purchase. So how we are addressing these needs within this budget. Well, we are fortunate that tax revenues are outperforming the estimates that we had for both FY21 and FY22, the fiscal year we're in. and 20 fiscal years. We've revised the projections for FY23 because, as the county executive has pointed out over and over, the economic disruption caused by COVID and the pandemic was not even across the income scale. It really hit people in the bottom quartile. And in a state and the county that has a progressive tax structure, those are the people who have the lowest tax rates and contribute the lowest percentage of our tax revenues, especially at the county level where we don't receive a sales tax. So our revenues have continued to perform very well, surprisingly well. This budget is the first budget that has our reserves at our county policy, which is 10% of adjusted governmental revenue. So we set aside not only 10% of our own tax revenues, we set aside an amount equivalent to 10% of all the state aid the county receives, whether directly for the government or to the Montgomery County Public Schools. So for every new dollar of aid we get from the state, we put another dime aside in our reserve account just in case there's a cutback at the state level. We put aside 10%, an amount equal to 10% of the Montgomery College's tuition. So we have a reserve policy that is aggressive and unique. Our financial advisor couldn't find another local government in the country that has the reserve policy that we have. It was created years ago following the Great Recession, and we are now up to the 10% fully funded. Thanks to the leadership of the county executive, we have pushed to view this budget not just through a fiscal prism, but also through a racial equity, social justice prism, and a climate change prism, so that we're trying to see how the decisions we're making in the budget are impacting both racial equity and climate change. This was our first attempt at doing it. So we learned a lot through that. As you will see as we go through the budget, we have record funding for the Montgomery County Public Schools, are putting record funds into climate change, into affordable housing, and we're dealing with continuing to address the needs of individuals and households who have been impacted by the pandemic and the economic dislocation. All right, so Jerry, always I know, wants to make sure we have a conversation about where is the money coming from and where is the money going. So in general, these are the revenues that are flowing into the county budget for FY23. As you can see, the gray piece of the donut are taxes that are generated by our own taxes. I'll show you a chart that shows exactly what I'm talking about and where our tax revenues come from. But 1/5 of our budget comes from intergovernmental aid. This is almost all state aid, with the vast majority of it going directly to either Montgomery County Public Schools or Montgomery College. So we have to reappropriate that money so that they have the permission to spend it, but it is all formula driven, and other than us appropriating it, it does not flow through our budget. Fees and fines and miscellaneous make up the other pieces of 10% of our budget. Fees and fines would be everything from stormwater quality charge to red light cameras and speeding cameras. Miscellaneous is almost, well, 2/3 of it is actually the revenue we make off of selling alcohol through our county liquor program. So taxes, where are our taxes coming from? Well, two major chunks. So almost 90% of our tax revenues come from the property tax and from the income tax. And again, the property taxes remain strong. Demand for housing is hot across the county. Having spoken to some realtors, it is really a question of supply. There's not enough supply for the demand that's happening. The interesting thing And Bethesda Magazine had an interesting piece in their real estate issue from last year about the price demand and inflation on our most expensive residential properties. That really, since the Great Recession, our residential properties valued at $2 million or more had really remained stagnant for quite some time. And now there's a huge demand for those properties, and that's driving up prices for some of our most expensive housing. One of the things when you look at our revenues and you think about over the last 2 years and in the future, one thing that I think will be driving revenues in Montgomery County, in the state, and I'll use the phrase that the State Board of Revenue Estimates used in one of the most recent projections, was the maturation of the millennial generation. The fact that while many of us might, in our mind's eye, think of a millennial as a 20-year-old, well, they're now a 40-year-old. And some of those 40-year-olds, some of those millennials are now hitting or have hit their peak earning years of their economic lifetime. So they are, after years of graduate school and being a junior associate at a law firm, they're now a partner, and both spouses are now partners, and that they are now in the economic position to buy that house in Chevy Chase or Potomac, and that's where you see this demand coming. And I think that's what's going to shape the next decade in Maryland and certainly in Montgomery County. And that's been one of the missing pieces of our economy, as we have, for those of you who have been around for a while in Montgomery County, and I know several of you on this call have been activists for quite some time in Montgomery County. You've seen sort of which I think you've seen prior waves, and I think this is going to be the third great generational shift in Montgomery County, as that first big pre-war wave came out, totally reshaped the county, and then a bit of a lull, and then the baby boomers hit and reshaped the county from the mid 80s through the early part of the aughts. And then there was a bit of a lull for a lot of reasons, partly because my generation of, Generation Xers, that we are a small generation sandwiched between the two largest generations in American history, the boomers and the millennials. And now that millennials are starting to enter the market, you're going to see a push and an increase in residential property values, in economic activity. And I think I'm fond of pointing out the return of the Roaring 20s, which is very fitting in Montgomery County, since I sit here in the executive office building 2 blocks away from the permanent residence of F. Scott Fitzgerald, who of course wrote the seminal novel of the Roaring 20s of the 20th century, The Great Gatsby. And we will see, I think, a similar Roaring 20s. The challenge that we face as a nation, as a state, as a community is, how do we make sure these Roaring 20s both are more equitable and at the same time don't lead to the same collapse in the 30s. So, but I think we face very positive times in Montgomery County. Now, the next chart is especially for Jerry. Here's the detail on all the different taxes. It's right out of the budget book. I was going to do an interpretive dance of this chart, but he told me to keep going. So this is where the money is actually going for our expenditures. As you can see, 51% goes to education, primarily to MCPS, also to Montgomery College. So half of our budget goes to those two critically important functions for our community and for our residents. All of the different green shades of green are all the activities of the Montgomery County government. So you can see public safety, health and human services, general government, all of the big items that we fund out of our general taxes. And again, this is the tax supported budget. You can see the amount of money that goes to park and planning, the yellow bar, and then that purplish is our debt service. And again, when you think about we are paying debt on the school construction, on libraries, on rec centers, on roads. So that is our annual cost of paying back the borrowing we've made for capital improvements. Now, where does this budget go? And I think in the newsletter that Jerry sent out, I think he captured many of these bullet points. So maybe some of you have had a chance to actually read all of this. So again, I'm not going to try to read all of this to you as much as all of you would enjoy me reading out every slide. But you can see we are putting in substantial supports for our families and individuals who are still dealing with the economic and sometimes the health repercussions of the pandemic. One of the things that the county executive is proud of that we developed during the pandemic were these regional service hubs with the whole idea of getting services. And really this started with food out into the communities and putting them in a variety of places. We had 8 different hubs across the county so that people could come and get access to food. And then that quickly grew to get access to other services, whether it was testing and then it was vaccines, but then it was signing up for some of the programs that we have or being directed to other places where you can get assistance and with our nonprofit community. So we are going to be continuing that throughout the next fiscal year. We continue to put money aside to support new immigrants as well as the asylum seekers, whether they are coming from Afghanistan or coming from Ukraine. We are very proud of the work that we did to ensure that all parts of our community had access to testing, had access to vaccines. You know, while many other communities have large gaps between individual racial groups and the county overall average, in Montgomery County, we did not see that because we made a concerted effort to put funds and work with our variety of minority health programs. And so we're going to continue that work in FY23 with our work with the African American Health Program, the Latino Health Initiative, and the Asian American Health Initiative. We're moving forward with a guaranteed income pilot program. Several jurisdictions are trying this around the country of providing people with direct cash assistance with no strings attached, with the idea of people in need know where to spend the money, and that instead of giving people, for example, more food stamps and supplementary nutritional assistance, actually, if they need money to get their car fixed, that's a better use of the funds and gets them self-sufficient and back to work and off of public assistance. So we are experimenting with a guaranteed income pilot for a handful of county residents. We're creating an Office of Food Resilience, again, to look into all of the various food needs that we have across the county, whether that's people lacking the resources to buy food or getting access to healthy food, and connecting farmers and local food sources to the people that need it. So we are continuing a lot of work with the homeless community. We, thanks to the county executive's prodding, we opened our first year-round comprehensive full-service shelter. Most of previously the shelters that we had were either for just the cold weather months, and even the year-round shelters closed during the midday, so people had to leave. We've opened our first 200-person year-round 24-hour shelter so that people can stay and get services during the day and not be on the street and not be expected just because it's spring to go out and just live on the streets again. So great work, even in the middle of the pandemic, to support our homeless community. In fact, as a percentage, we had a lower death rate amongst the homeless community than we had over the general population. And that was very different than other places around the country, because we were able to house many of our homeless and provide them with supports, testing, and vaccines. So we're continuing nonprofits that help people with developmental disabilities or people in need of a medical adult daycare. We will be supporting the standing up of a 988 system. So a phone call for people with a mental health crisis, or suicide prevention, an easy to remember number to call. For our public schools, as I mentioned, it's the largest ever budget for Montgomery County Public Schools. Not only are we providing them $2.9 billion, they have received more than $400 million from the federal government through the CARES Act, the American Rescue Plan. So they do have $270 million in federal funds to augment their operations. So, the county executive provided money to open the new full-service wellness center at Kennedy High School and to expand mental health support services at 10 of our high schools that currently do not have a wellness center. And then you can see some of the other things that we're doing to expand early care and education, and even to support the growth of the Kid Museum in Bethesda. As I mentioned, making great progress on providing record amounts of money to deal with the county's need to fight climate change. There's going to be $18.6 million for the Montgomery County Green Bank to help commercial properties convert to lower carbon footprint equipment. We are trying to get the county council to move forward on the building energy performance standards, the BEPS program, to help other commercial and multifamily residential buildings improve their energy efficiency. Money for improving the health of our urban forests. We are trying to help lawn care companies move to electric equipment so that they're not using gas-powered equipment, which obviously both puts out more pollution and are much louder. We are continuing to improve the Rainscapes program to capture stormwater management. As many of you have followed for a long time, the largest uncontrolled amount of non-point pollution into the Chesapeake Bay is stormwater runoff. And so we are continuing to figure out ways to move forward with clean water and stormwater management. We are going to be moving forward with composting and a variety of incentives so that people throw less trash away and provide them with an incentive to pay less as they save more stuff out of the trash. So with transportation, we are restoring ride-on and our call and ride service to our pre-pandemic levels. We have cut the county executive has proposed a $1 fare. You may remember that fares were $2 before pandemic, that the fare stopped when as a part of the pandemic to both relieve the cost pressures on people using transportation, as well as making it safer for the drivers. Fares stopped in transit all over the country on buses. We have continued to have free fares through the end of, currently scheduled through the end of June. And then the county executive has proposed restoring a $1 fare. We are continuing to move forward with electrifying our vehicle fleet, whether it's buses or cars, so that the county is reducing its carbon footprint. The county executive, and working with the school system, was able to actually get the single largest electrification of school buses in the country through an innovative public-private partnership. You know, the federal government puts out all sorts of great tax credits to get you to buy electric vehicles. We don't pay taxes to the federal government. So we've partnered with a firm that will buy the buses. They can get the tax credits and then get us the buses at a far cheaper rate because they've got the benefit of the tax credit. In doing so, as we move our school buses to an all-electric system, those school buses, which often throughout the summer sit primarily unused, if you think of that big bus depot that's right off of 270 between the Spur and Montrose, that will be a giant battery for the community during the summer, so that when we have surges of electric demand, those buses can be charged up at night when there's the lowest demand, and when there's higher electric demand, they can put the electricity right back into the grid. So it's a creative way to reduce pollution, to have an additional power source, and to use this asset that for part of the year sits unused. For libraries and for recreation, we are now already to more hours than we had pre-pandemic. Libraries in particular have had a lot of turnover. We're trying to put funding back into the library so they can staff up to fill the positions they need to keep all the libraries open to the hours that we have gone to. We're trying to purchase more ebooks. They have obviously turned out to be quite popular. They are, as a budget person, my first thought was, wow, ebooks are going to be so much less costly for the county than actually having physical books. But the interesting thing is businesses sell ebook licenses for only a certain number of uses. So unlike that book you might buy and just have on the shelf until it no longer meets our quality standards, no matter how many people use it, ebooks actually come with an expiration date or an expiration after a number of uses. So they're nice in that they don't cost clearly the money to store them and move them around the county, but they do come with another hidden cost. Over the next fiscal year, we're going to be opening the SCRAC, the South County Regional Recreation and Aquatic Center in downtown Silver Spring. So we will have a large new rec center and pool in downtown Silver Spring. Thankfully, knock on wood, everything come July will continue to be strong. From a pandemic standpoint, we will have funding available to get us back to fireworks to celebrate Independence Day this year. And additional funding to help older adults overcome the long-term impact of COVID through programs, classes, and events in our senior centers operated by the Recreation Department. Affordable housing. The county executive is putting the largest amount of money ever into affordable housing. $40 million to help naturally us support, preserve, and protect naturally occurring affordable housing. There are projects around the county that because of their age and their location, they are affordable, but there's still demands on them to be resold, redeveloped. We wanted to create a project fund so that especially our nonprofit partners or the Housing Opportunities Commission can move quickly to purchase affordable housing when it's up for sale before they get the final financing package in place, because sometimes the private sector is moving fast. We have to be able to move fast to protect the housing, and by having cash aside in order to do that then you can replace by getting a regular financing plan in place, the low income housing credits from the federal government. It just helps make sure we're not losing out at opportunities for us to protect affordable housing within our community. And then to help with the overall operation of the government, we are putting in more money to support the general election this year, and one change from when this went in. Obviously, the primary, which we thought was going to occur in FY22, will actually occur in FY23. So we will be doing both a primary and general election in the upcoming fiscal year, but we want to make sure Not only do we have the support of our public elections fund, which has proven to be very popular and a great incentive to having a far more diverse group of people running, that we will have the additional money necessary to support some of the requirements that we have in the operation of the elections. We will be adding full-time staff to MC 311. We've augmented it by a number of contractual positions in order to make sure that that system is still functioning well, and it's really performing at the best rates ever as far as how quickly you get to an operator, how quickly you get your question answered, a very low drop rate. So that program definitely bounced a little bit at the beginning of the pandemic, but has turned out to be working very well. In public safety, we are providing substantial increases to police officer salaries to remain competitive with the region. We had slid a little bit in comparison, especially on the early years of salaries, but we have put in funded an agreement with our police union to make sure we are at the in the upper tier of salaries in the region, so that we continue to recruit the best and the brightest into our police force. We are making sure that we have additional civilian staff in order to comply with the state's requirements around transparency of police discipline. So we will be able to move quickly on public information requests and to support the police advisory board and the administrative charging committees, which are all part of the law enforcement reform bill that the General Assembly passed last year. We're adding money to provide mental health supports for police officers, for firefighters, for sheriffs, recognizing the special demands that are on them during especially these trying times in both with the pandemic and with the issues around law enforcement. We are putting $800,000 into for security grants to nonprofit institutions, including religious groups, who of course have been under sadly greater threat of extremists. In fire services, we are expanding our integrated health program to make sure we are providing assistance to some of our frequent callers to 911. There are people who have a variety of health needs, and if we can stay on top of those health needs, have people regularly visiting them, with the goal of reducing 911 calls from those are the most frequent callers. It saves money for all of us, time to response, and it keeps all of our equipment ready for other emergencies that pop up. We're adding a chase car to Silver Spring. One of the concepts that we're moving forward with is chase cars. The whole idea, a paramedic to you as quickly as possible, and if we can have people out in like an SUV that can get someone, usually two people, to someone in distress to start life-saving treatments right then, with then the fire truck and the ambulance to come shortly thereafter, you are improving the chances of someone's survival. So we're trying to think of creative ways to get treatment out to people and care as quickly as possible. So we, thanks to our partnership with the County Council, will be establishing the new Office of Grants Management this year to help make it easier for us to assist our nonprofit partners in getting funding from the county and finding more funding from other philanthropic groups, the federal government and the state. We are going to be putting out $8.2 million in community grants across the county, $3 million additional for capital grants for community groups. And then you can see some of the other things that we're trying to do to provide the ability for groups to seek assistance throughout the fiscal year, as opposed to just trying to get named in a grant through the budget. In economic development, I talked a little bit about how we're fully funding Montgomery College. We're putting more money into the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation so that we can continue to retain and attract businesses, more money into the Visitors Bureau, again, to help the hospitality industry, which is quite large in our county. And in fact, we are a global center for hospitality when you think of the fact that Marriott and Choice both have their international headquarters in Montgomery County, and Hilton has their international headquarters in Tysons. This area, from a leadership standpoint in hospitality, is quite big. And we will be expanding funding to help WorkSource Montgomery with providing people both transitioning out of the correctional system, as well as people who are looking to enhance their skills to qualify for jobs within the community. There's additional money for the Park and Planning Commission, the rate increase that the WSSC asked for, and an agreement between the two counties. The county executive and the council have worked with the municipal partners to come up with a formula to fund our local governments, our municipal governments. It's been a long simmering dispute between our municipal governments and the county. We were able to work out a new formula that pleased both the county executive, the council, and the municipalities. So that is funded in the budget. Obviously, there's more money in for the county council, as the council is going to grow from 9 to 11 members. So they are adding all of the, not just the salaries for those members, but for their offices, and preparing for that transition to a larger council. And of course, there's also the Office of the People's Council, which I think Alan mentioned earlier. And with that, I have run through all of the slides. I can't believe no one interrupted me, but thank you for the applause, and I would be happy to answer your questions. I realized early on, one of the most entertaining things for me during the pandemic was I like to make little one-liners. Some of you have heard me do some of these presentations. I throw in jokes, and then no one laughs because everyone is on mute. But finally, when I convinced people to go off mute, again, no one laughed. So I don't. I question my ability to make the budget interesting and humorous.
Thank you, Rich, for a really wonderful presentation. I think that PowerPoint is going to be very valuable to the people who couldn't join us this evening. I know there's going to be a lot of questions. I've got a dozen myself. I'm going to ask people to use the raise hand function to get recognized. We have 2 people in the queue already. You can find the raise hand function underneath the reactions button. At the very bottom of that, you'll see raised hand. So we'll just start with questions. If it's okay with you, Rich, we'll start with Peggy Dennis.
Yes, Rich. I'm a little confused about what part of field maintenance for playing fields comes under the operating budget as opposed to the CIP budget. And I'm thinking specifically of how we can evaluate the cost effectiveness of synthetic turf playing fields as opposed to natural turf playing fields, which are properly built and maintained. I know you've got both the public school fields to contend with and the recreational department fields. So how are those divvied up and handled?
Oh, you are asking a level of detail about a program that I don't know if I can answer. I'm so sorry, Peggy. After Jerry's kind introduction about how much I know, the first question, and I'm like, oh. So, I mean, there obviously MCPS has a whole bunch of fields. We have fields as a county. The Park and Planning Commission has fields that they maintain. The way it would, from what I know about the state, that would be such a simple answer for me. The county, with the way that it tends to put some of the support for the fields in the CIP, it would be a bit of a mix. And of course, there's a division between the parks and sometimes helping the parks maintain some of the school fields. As you know, the county executive has long questioned the value of artificial turf fields.
Right.
And has pushed as much as possible the school system, of which the county government has, as you know, it's a dance with the school system as far as a level of control, but the county executive has been exceedingly clear to everyone, and from his time before being county executive, about the need to do natural turf and not artificial turf. So for those of you who know Debbie Spielberg, she is a vocal proponent of natural turf, and I love giving her a hard time every day about it. So
Don't do that. We love Debbie.
yes.
Thank you, Peggy. Carrie Lamari.
Carrie,
Got it. Rich, I've got two questions for you.
are they about Colesville?
One was from a police officer, a retired police officer. He gave me a phone call, and he had indicated that I think it's McCrea, the Retired Employees Union, that we are now taking $20 million from, which would normally go to fund the retirement, to put in the budget. I don't know if that's true or not. I thought I would ask. The second question relates to WSSC. As you know, last year, I think it was last year that we initially started, this COVID rent control, where I think we were getting, 1.5%, allowing tenants to increase rent 1.5%. We allowed WSSC to go up 6.5%. I see this year they're going up 6.5% again. That's rather unsustainable. I mean, we're not getting 6.5% at the bank. So it begs the question, can we continue this level of increasing WSSC fees? So those are my two questions.
Oh, two little questions.
Sorry.
So I'll start with WSSC. So I think the challenge that WSSC has, it has an ever-growing but still aging infrastructure across the two counties. So it is trying to maintain the infrastructure that it has, and we all see on, fortunately not that too frequent of a basis, but pipes burst because of their age, because of the conditions and the rules around what could be built 50 years ago, and what we've discovered now through science of what works and what doesn't work, and the need to replace some of the system, as well as just increasing the size of some of the pipes. So they have the cost of maintaining the system, and we have actually succeeded in many of our policy goals of, even though we have more people today than ever before, water use has dramatically declined because we've used more water efficient toilets. We've learned a variety of things individually about how to conserve water. We use water efficient showers. And so the amazing thing is, while the population has grown, water usage hasn't, but the infrastructure continues to age. So we're dealing with some of the implications of a mature system, and a system that the revenues have not kept pace with the ability to deal with their aging infrastructure, and the idea that the way state law functions with the WSSC covering our two counties, if the two councils don't come to an agreement about a rate increase, it's whatever the commissioners adopt. So you've got to come up with some balance of, this is what the commission is saying they needed, and they wanted a much higher rate, and this is what the council has decided through the agreement with the executive and Prince George's, that this is a viable amount of money to sustain the system, because, again, if you keep the rates low to keep it at a 1% increase or 2% increase, you potentially run the situation of having a catastrophic failure of the infrastructure. So, and then, we are also trying to implement a variety of new ways to deal with wastewater. So, it is the perfect storm of aging infrastructure, the success of conservation, new requirements for cleaning water, the discharge, whether it's the discharge from the water treatment plant in Potomac, or if it's the discharge from Blue Plains or Piscataway. There are a variety of regulations that the WSSC is trying to deal with. So that is, a relatively brief answer to a monumental question. But I think it is worth a large conversation about, what the public should be prepared for in the future about water and water infrastructure. There are some things that are unique to our community, and there are some things that are similar to communities across the country as they deal with aging infrastructure, reduced demand for lots of good reasons, and the need to enhance wastewater treatment because of its impact on pollution. On to retirement. So we have not only a pension system, Montgomery County has been a leader in the creation of pre-funding for other post-employment benefits. Some of you may have heard the term OPEB. So years ago, the federal, Government Accountability Standard Board mandated every government to report its liabilities on the promises it's making its retirees for healthcare as the cost of healthcare was going up. So every one of us, every local government had to prepare, every state government had to say, this is our liability in our annual financial report. And then many governments decided, okay, if you're going to have a liability, you should figure out a way to address it. So we started to aggressively fund a trust fund to deal with our retiree healthcare commitment in the future, because part of the argument here is there's generational equity. You all are benefiting from my service right now as a county employee. So therefore, you all should, part of your tax dollars should go to pay for my employee healthcare as a retiree, because why push that cost off onto the future taxpayers? So we have a system in Montgomery County where we are funding on a pay-as-you-go basis the retirement costs of the healthcare costs of all of our current retirees, and putting money aside for future retirees. Well, we have been so good at that over the last decade. We have more than $900 million set aside in a trust fund between the tax dollars we've put in and the investments that we've made. We have grown that pool of money to $900 million. Our actuary has said in reviewing the numbers this year, you've got too much money. I mean, this wasn't my idea. This wasn't Mark's idea. This was our actuary. The actuary, the Leggett administration hired for the county, has said, look, you're putting too much money aside this year. You can reduce the amount of money you are putting into the trust fund. Now, we could do it one of two ways. You could take money out of the trust fund, or you can reduce the amount of money that's going into the, well, you can take the money out of the trust fund and give it to the pay-go costs for retirees. So, I mean, it's kind of like, I liken it to a prepaid college savings account. You've been putting money aside. Well, one of the kids is now going to college. You can start taking the money out. You can start taking the money out to pay for its intended purpose. That's all we're doing, because we have, again, so much money set aside already. The actuary is saying you don't need to put as much in as you've been putting in. I've never seen in my time around government budgeting, I have never seen an actuarial determined contribution that was a negative number, because usually it's always, you know, it comes up to some appropriation. It might go up and down as the trust fund goes up and down and the gains and losses are smoothed out. But we've been so successful that the actuary is finally saying, hey, you've achieved, you've passed the threshold. You can use part of the money now for its intended purpose. So I think it's a great success. It is one of those things that it's so different than a pension, because when you think of a pension system, and between our pension system and our retiree healthcare system, we have more than $7 billion built up in assets. But a pension is a direct payment to Kerry Lamari for the amount of time he worked. It's a formula that you can figure out, and you can figure out the 100 other Kerrys and how much money you need to put aside, and the fact that we're going to be sending Kerry Lamari a check in order for him to do whatever he wants with it as a retirement. The OPEB trust fund, the only beneficiary of the OPEB trust fund is the county government. It doesn't send a check to Kerry to then go out and buy insurance. It just helps us as a self-insured entity. It just helps us pay the claims of our retirees. And, you know, I think it's amazing. I mean, for me, having looked at this as a state, I mean, our liability is, we are more than 60% funded from a long-term liability in healthcare. And quite frankly, if I knew what the next 30 years of healthcare was going to look like in this country, as much as I love Montgomery County, the Montgomery County government, I should probably be doing something far, far more profitable than as the CAO of the county government. Who knows what healthcare is going to be like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So it's very hard to figure out how much money should you have set aside. Medicare disappears tomorrow. We are woefully underfunded. Medicare is reduced, the starting age of Medicare is reduced from 65 to 60. Suddenly our funded status jumps dramatically. And so the actuaries are saying, unlike pensions where it is helpful to be 100% funded, with your healthcare liability, you don't want to be 100% funded because you have no idea what the next 30 years are going to look like. You just want to have a solid amount of money that gives you money to help pay your bills. So it's a multi-year commitment that has shown great success. We have far more money set aside as a county than the state does in their OPEB trust fund, because we have been so aggressive and disciplined, and we're finally able to reap the benefits of that aggressive position towards pre-funding our liabilities.
Good luck explaining that to your friend, Kerry Lamari. Jerry Garson.
I'd like to put an ad in for your previous employer, known as the Office of Management and Budget. If anyone wants to go online and look at all the budget details, they can go to the county government, then go to the Office of Management and Budget, and then they can look at all these nice charts that they prepared. Specifically, there are beautiful charts on the expenses on various departments, starting on page 80 the whole series. And the charts that you showed in the beginning on income are on pages 18 through 20 and 13 through 18. This is just my public service announcement for when you were head of OMB. Now you're the county's chief executive officer. I'd also received a number of questions from different people. I'm a CPA and I've been doing taxes and working on tax projections for a number of seniors. And when I explained to them that the state government is going to give them $1,750 towards their Maryland state income tax, they think it's great. Then we go through the calculations and we actually see that the county portion, which is supposed to be a fraction of the state taxes, are actually going to be higher for many people. Does the county plan on doing anything to stop this from occurring on the income taxes for the residents of the county who are over age 65? I mean, this was just passed by the state legislature last Friday.
I know what you're referring to, and I'm kind of, I don't know why the state, I don't know why the county tax, any county tax burden would go up.
Well, county tax won't go up, but instead of the state tax will drop by $1,750 for married couples over age 65, and the county tax won't drop any. So therefore, it creates a result that the county tax will be higher than the state tax. Instead of being a piggyback, it'll be the primary tax that the people pay.
Yeah, well, we don't, I mean, obviously the state, I mean, Jerry, you're showing your longtime engagement in the state, considering the piggyback tax was eliminated in, I think, 1997. So, you know, we have a tax rate, the state has a tax rate. They've decided to move to reduce, in essence, to reduce the tax rate by excluding some income from seniors.
No, they're doing it as a credit instead of changing the brackets. They're just doing it as a $1,750 credit, which just produces a strange anomaly.
Yep. I don't, I mean, you know, the state, the tax structure between the state government and the county governments in Maryland is not the same. You know, the state obviously gets its primary revenue sources are the income tax, the sales tax, the corporate income tax, and gambling. The local governments in Maryland do not get any part of the corporate income tax, gaming, or unless you have a casino, and the sales tax. So those things, the casinos and the gaming has continued to perform unbelievably well. The sales tax with interestingly, the fact that the sales tax is online sales are covered by the state sales tax now. And the fact that actually inflation is making goods more expensive. And, you know, part of the story of the sales tax has been people were spending more money on services that aren't subject to the sales tax in Maryland and less on goods. That shift is now the increasing the cost of goods will increase the sales tax. So the state's revenues are continuing to dramatically outperform its local governments because we have the stability, although but not much volatility in the property tax and then our local income tax. So, and the way that the federal government distributed funds far more went to state governments, completely understandable, than to local government. So the state was just sitting on a much larger surplus. I mean, $7 billion in surplus. So they're able to make some tax decisions that none of the local governments are in the same condition to provide. But that doesn't mean, Jerry, you can't go over to the county council and say, hey, you all should be doing something to work this out with a similar type credit, so as to keep the two in balance.
Yeah, Jerry.
Well, since I only get 2 minutes, it's hard to explain this in 2 minutes.
I trust you can do it.
Next question from Kathleen Sammy. Kathleen. You're still muted. There you go.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. I hope my questions are simple. First time I've ever paid attention to the county budget. I'm just quite curious, the park and planning budget, or where their money goes, it said 2.9% or $180.7 million. Is that for operations? Is that for salaries? Because I thought it was a state agency.
So it's it is not a state agency. It is the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission was created in state law. to cover both Montgomery and Prince George's County. So it's a creature of state law.
Okay.
But it is funded entirely by the two counties. So the laws governing what they do, how they do it, that sort of thing, all exists within state statute since it is a bi-county organization. And as a lover of history, I am more than happy to spend probably 15 minutes going a stroll down memory lane of how we wound up with the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. But I will charge you for another performance of that on another evening. But
Yeah. So it includes salaries and
so
operations,
it includes salaries.
anything that they do.
It includes
Any-
it includes everything from the operation of the parks, the regional parks that they do, the
Yeah.
park police and the salary of the park police, park maintenance, the planning department, and all of the work that goes on through the planning department
Okay,
on their end. So it is all operations.
All
Within
of
the
it.
debt service piece, you would see some of the debt service of things that we may have paid for them. They're doing land acquisition with some of that money. So they're renovating the playgrounds at the community parks. So it's it's a variety of things.
okay, so and then the environment also was a 2.9%. Is that DEP? Is that all DEP, that environmental budget, or is that?
Yes, that is
Okay.
overwhelmingly the Department of Environmental Protection.
Okay.
And again, just to be clear, that's the tax supported budget. So the Department of Environmental Protection gets money for trash. They handle solid waste, trash, recycling, and so that is not considered a tax supported budget because that's a fee that not everyone pays in the county.
Right. And the county council budget, where does it come from? Is that out of this budget or some other budget? Where's the
Yeah,
county?
that is a tax supported item. So it is within this budget.
Okay. So if I wanted to see details on those three groups and where their money goes for staff, for operations or environment or planting trees, those details will be found in what Jerry mentioned in the OMB county budget. Where do you find the details?
So it is in the county budget, which is, it could be a lethal weapon for the size of it, but
Yeah.
it is all online. If you go to the county budget, if you go to the county website, Montgomery County MD.gov, you scroll down the page, you will see a button, you'll see a graph, like a pie chart, and it'll say open budget. And if you click on that, you can go and you can download the whole thing. You can go right to the park and planning section, the county council section. It will give you information about where the money's coming from for them, what they're spending on it, how it changes from this year, from last year to this year, how many positions, all that kind of detail for the council, for DEP, and for park and planning. And it pulls in the things, it pulls it in together so you can see all of DEP, no matter where the money is coming from, that's flowing into the Department of Environmental Protection.
And just sorry, I don't want to take up all the time. Last question on the Park and Planning Department. Is it the board chairman that is in charge of distributing the money that they get into staffing or operations or decisions on, let's say, creating a division of the environment?
Well,
how does that happen? Because there used to be a division of the environment with a chief in the Park and Planning office. And it got pushed away. And now the staff are just underneath other generalists, and there's no centralized Department of the Environment without a chief. And I think environmentally, we're seeing a lot of problems with this approach, and why I'm trying to figure out how we can get budgeting for that and advocate for that and see where maybe budgets could be maybe moved around or staff could be moved around, and how we could advocate to get some more protections for the environment because it's just getting chipped away.
Yes,
You do that because I know money always matters.
The chair of the commission does function as, in essence, like the executive director of the Park and Planning Commission for the Montgomery County side. So yes, the chair, working with the other commissioners, would put in a budget request that comes to the executive, comes to the council. The council has to appropriate the money. The council could say, you know, some of it must be spent for this purpose. But the director does have, the chair does have leeway in the setup of the commission, unless those things are specified in either state law or predicated in the allocation the county is making to the commission.
So it does, just in summary, it sounds like citizens could advocate to the council and the county executive to fund a position for the director of the environment as a chief in a division in park and planning, and maybe they might be able to override the planning board chair.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But just at this point in the process for fiscal year 23, which starts on July 1st, the executive has submitted his budget. Really what you would need now is to go to that, like the public hearing next week on the this is a problem I see. Please put money in, or please require the commission to have this position.
And when is that hearing, and when would I have to do that?
There are multiple, it's next week, and there are multiple days to sign up during the evening or during the day.
Okay.
But as Jerry pointed out, everyone gets 2 minutes.
Yeah.
You can hand in a much longer piece and refer to it, but you know, your verbal testimony will be limited to 2 minutes.
Okay. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem.
Anybody else has questions? I want them to use the raise your hand function. Bailey, I've got some questions I want to ask Rich before you go, but please try to raise your hand using the function. Rich, a couple of things that stood out to me during your presentation. One of them was that the slice of the budget for public safety is more than $200 million more than Health and Human Services. And I'm wondering, why is that such a big number at $600+ million? That's the first piece. The second piece, well, third piece. Second piece is, why fund MCPS at 117 million above the maintenance of effort? I mean, the maintenance of effort has always been a reach for the county government to give to MCPS, and 117 million seems like a big jump over what we're used to, at least when I worked at the county council. And then a question that some people have asked me separately was, you know, why a lot of jurisdictions around here are considering moving to free ride-on. Why charge $1 as opposed to have it 100% free?
Okay, so it's important to note on Health and Human Services that we are the only jurisdiction in Maryland that operates the social services unit as a local government function. While public health is a local government responsibility in Maryland, social services is actually a state responsibility. Early in the Duncan administration, he asked for those employees to be transferred from the state government to the local government. So we operate this hybrid Department of Health and Human Services that no other county does. We provide, so therefore we're employing the people who are meeting with someone who's coming in and asking for assistance, whether it's temporary assistance for needy families, a supplemental nutritional assistance program, what was once known as food stamps. We are qualifying people for a range of programs that we do not actually pay for. So SNAP is primarily federal government, the federal funds that are given to the states. The temporary assistance for needy families, which was once called aid to families with dependent children, the general welfare program, that again is primarily state dollars with some federal dollars. So a lot of the assistance that is going to people is provided for by the state. and does not flow through our budget because it is a check sent from the state to Alan, even though it might be a county employee who sat and helped Alan fill out all the paperwork to see what he needed and what benefits he could get. So that's why in this case, HHS is lower than public safety, because a lot of the benefits that are flowing to people from HHS are all flowing directly from the state government. So that's why that piece of the puzzle does not flow through our county budget. Hopefully that made sense to you. Really, from a public safety standpoint, we are funding the whole public safety enterprise, whether it's the police department, the sheriff's department, the corrections, or the fire department. So, and that is a standard local government feature across the state. And of course, in our situation, we have one combined fire department for the whole county. While some municipalities have police departments, overwhelmingly we're providing the police protection for the entire county. Only Tacoma Park has a full service police department where they would respond to all crimes that occur within Tacoma Park. We are responsible for responding throughout the rest of the county, even in Rockville and Gaithersburg and Cherry Chase Village. We are the ones on the hook for first response, and we handle all major crimes across the county except in Tacoma Park. So that's why our public safety budget is larger than the HHS budget. On the Montgomery County Public Schools and the maintenance of effort, we're entering an interesting time with projections. And Alan, you sat as a council staff person through some of those years where enrollment was growing quite fast. Well, we've actually seen a plateau in enrollment. So you don't have that same extreme cost pressures in the out years through large increases projected in enrollment. And you have the advent of the Kerwin Commission, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. And one of the things that the school system came and argued, I think persuasively, to County Executive Elrich was, and this is happening in other places around the state, trust me, by even larger numbers, you need to start putting in the money now to be prepared for these new state dollars that are coming in for all of the new programs that are demanded by and required by the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. And a lot of them are around more teachers and fundamentally changing both the way that we train and reward teachers and the way that a teacher's workday is arranged so that you have the ability to have more teachers to deal with one-on-one work with children, as opposed to just being in a classroom for almost the entire day. So, which is the structure of high-performing school systems from around the world and in other places around the country that have shown greater achievements and academic performance than we have in Maryland. And I think I hit 2 of your 3 questions.
The other question was about the dollar for ride-on as opposed to free ride-on.
So, again, we have by far the largest local government transit system in the state and the region. I mean, in Maryland, the bus, which is ride-on in Prince George's County, they call themselves the bus. The bus is 10% of our system. So we have the most comprehensive system, and we have heard over and over from surveys that we have done from riders, pre-COVID, during COVID, they want a system that is going to get people, that is going to provide bus service in a timely, efficient way to help them get to and from work and other responsibilities. And they would rather pay to make sure that they have that functioning system than have diminished services and free fares. So we have made fares free for people under 18, for people over 65, and really, providing fares at a half of what they once were was, we thought, a way to an equitable way to continue to provide a revenue source to ride on, while at the same time making it affordable for people who want and or need to use it.
Somebody asked a question, well, Nancy posted in the chat about the maintenance of effort. Doesn't that ramp up the level for the subsequent years? Where now we'd be expected to put in another $117 million to achieve maintenance of effort for next year?
So one of the interesting, and probably for many of you who have been following this issue for a long time, never thought you would be part of this conversation, that this year, in order to, if we just did maintenance of effort, we would actually be reducing the amount of money going to the school system, because a drop in enrollment means you can put in less money to the school system. So that's why I was saying from the projections for the future years, in the enrollment growth has dramatically slowed. And so all maintenance of effort is saying from one year to the next, you have to put in the same amount of per pupil from one year to the next. And if you have 160,000 children last year and you have 160,000 children next year, all maintenance of effort would be is level funding. So it is that from a maintenance of effort standpoint, it is driven entirely by the number of students. And that's what I was trying to say. We've had a significant slowdown in enrollment. And you can see for some of you who have written or followed this, and I know Sheldon has been looking at these details for years, as many other people have. You have when you see there was a huge wave that came through, but when you look at enrollment by elementary, middle, and high school's continuing to go up, but elementary schools are starting to trail down. So if we sit in this series of multi-years of limited enrollment growth, maintenance of effort becomes less of a quandary than it has been over the last decade.
Okay, thank you so much.
And I'm sorry someone felt I wasn't answering the question, because honest to God, I am not dodging this question. I'm trying to be on a complex matter, trying to be, in fact, quite upfront about this. If there's an unanticipated bump, I mean, no one could have foreseen the fact that the enrollment dropped. I mean, that was the unexpected bump. But would you really if we were to level fund the school system, it would have been a $32 million increase over maintenance of effort.
I think you answered my question. Bailey Condrey, you have a question.
I do. So we're going to give the school system $117 million over maintenance of effort, and not a dime of it is going to see whether or not they are CAP compliant.
I'm sorry if I'm having a brain freeze, but CAP compliant?
The climate action plan. So we're going to give MCPS all this money, and nobody is holding their feet to the fire to show a real boots on the ground approach to actually be a participant in helping the county get to where it needs to go with climate action.
I don't think there's Bailey. I don't think there's anything I could say that's going to get that will change your mind about that. There are. I mean, part of it is we have been very aggressive at the school system and getting them to totally change their approach to transportation and to get them on a plan, and a plan bigger and faster than anyone that we have found anywhere else in the country, of a major school system to electrify their bus fleet and totally move away from the use of fossil fuels from their buses.
But
that
wasn't the school system that did that. The county made them move in that direction. What is the school system doing? They could announce tomorrow that they're going to stop using synthetic turf. And none of these big, bright, shining movements come out of them ever.
Well, that's a question I think we should address again to the school system. Bailey,
And quite frankly, to all the people who are running for the school board.
and I think they've taken some pretty interesting initiatives on sustainability. I mean, they've got an office, they've got directors, and they're going to work on it.
They talk about it.
Well, we can ask them about that. Peggy Dennis, you have a question?
Yeah.
Peggy, I do get paid by the question. So if you're asking more, that's.
Well, I'd say one thing to Bailey on behalf of the school board, and that is my understanding is that whenever a school is renovated or a new school is built and there's a new roof, that solar panels go on. So that's one way I believe that the school system is helping with climate action. My other question would be, with the number of acres of parking lots that the county government has and the school government, why aren't they looking at more ways, for instance, bulk purchasing of putting solar panels over parking lots, as they have already done out at the Edison, what do you call it? The extra offices out at Edison, where DOT has some of its offices. They have a wonderful canopy of solar panels up above the parking lot.
So I know County Executive Elrich is pushing them very hard on how to maximize their facilities for solar use, and especially at doing that at parking lots across their physical plant. So that is something that he talks to them about frequently in order to do this. And I think, you know, they have had a rather large generational turnover of leadership at the school system.
Yeah.
For many of you who have been, you know, frequent visitors to Carver, it is a very different cohort of people who are leading the school system. And you see a lot of people, I've seen it, maybe not as fast as I'd like to see it. Some of you would like to see it, or the county executive would like to see it, but you have people who are more willing to have these conversations and to start pushing and thinking creatively about what they can do on a variety of fronts, not just on climate change, but on a variety of fronts as an organization. You know, but that leadership, that change in leadership has been bumpy. You know, we've had an interim, an acting superintendent, an interim superintendent going through the search, and you know, so now that hopefully we are coming up with a stable group of leadership, they will be more comfortable taking on some of these challenges moving forward.
Karen Cordry, sorry, Karen.
No problem. In one of my many emails, I got a question from somebody about whether or not the Chevy Chase Library redevelopment, should it be new housing put in and more redevelopment, or just refurbished? Is there, you know, is that something you're familiar with? What's going on with that?
I don't want to. I haven't checked in on that project recently, so Karen, I don't want to give you the freelance and give you the wrong answer. So I'll try to make sure you get an update as to what's happening with that right now.
Okay, because I know that, you know, we've just been talking about obviously mixed use kind of facilities, retail or governmental or something on the bottom, and housing above is you know, some useful kinds of ways of developing getting more of the affordable housing, which you were saying was one of the priorities there. So.
Yep.
Yeah, so Rich, I want to follow up on the housing issue. It's been a dominant topic of conversation for members of this group and throughout the community. I think you had a slide and it said $100 million for affordable housing. Is that the number, or was it larger than that? My question is, can you just give us sort of, you know, pull back the curtain and tell us what the executive's thinking is on the way to get really affordable housing not missing middle housing at $800,000 a unit, but affordable housing for sort of working class people, for first responders, for teachers, for people who go to work every day, and retail. The Council of Government says what we're supposed to have another 30 to 40,000 people come to the county over the next couple of decades. It doesn't seem like there's a strategy at the planning department, at the county council, and then in the executive offices for really meeting that need for lots more of really affordable units.
So it's $140 million to expand the preservation and production of affordable housing. The goals of the executive are to protect, preserve, and produce affordable housing. So that's why I was explaining that, you know, part of it is we've got affordable housing often in places that are quite desirable in the county, around the central business district in Bethesda, where you have a number of jobs, and it's just, you know, it makes it that much easier to be able to have that short commute. So what I tried to say earlier is, you know, naturally occurring affordable housing, that he's trying to make sure that we have funds to help people, help especially nonprofit and affordable housing providers and the Housing Opportunities Commission to be able to move very quickly on deals that, you know, sometimes you might have, you know, Alan, you've owned this property for a long time, it's affordable, you know, you're potentially, you know, your heirs are now ready to sell it, and you got to move fast on it. And then so that's why we're trying to create the financial tools to allow HOC and nonprofit providers to be able to nimbly get in and make a deal to acquire a property that then they can get into long-term financing. But trying to go through the approval process, trying to get the low-income housing tax credits necessary from the federal government, that can all take months to put together. And your family has decided, you know, hey, we need to cash out, we're leaving, and they sell the property to a private developer, and then the buildings are either raised and rebuilt or converted, and that affordable housing is lost. So you're going to see the executive, I think, working and talking more and more about a new partnership with the Housing Opportunities Commission, as they have gone through a change in leadership and a refocus of what they're going to be doing, and wanting to get far more into the production of properties that they continue to own, or they maintain, they work with a nonprofit partner to do it. So I think he's thinking big. I think one of the questions that he raises often when it comes to zoning, and he is far more articulate about this than I am, but you know, when we take parts of the county and say give it the property higher density, higher taller heights, that you wind up leaving a developer with the idea of, I'm not going to develop this land until and unless I can recoup a large profit off of it. And so, like, where I'm sitting in Rockville looking out at a development, a building that's 7 stories tall, which is the Main Street Rockville project, which is affordable housing primarily for people with disabilities. It is stick built, so it goes to the maximum height that it can go to. So it's, you know, concrete underground to cinder block to then stick built on top. It could be done affordably, and you have affordable housing for disabled people right here in Rockville, a block from the metro station and the whole Rockville core. Someone could have held on to that property for much longer, waiting for the economics to work on a 20 to 22 story building. And that's why you wind up with some of the most attractive parcels around the county sitting unused, because an owner is waiting for to exploit the maximum, and I don't mean that in a bad connotation. They're trying to maximize the profit they can make off of the property. And why develop it as a 7-story building if in 10 years you can develop it as a 22-story building, or maybe in 5 years, or who knows, 20 years. So that's why he's concerned about the whole idea of the more you increase density and increase zoning, the unintended consequence of you don't get what you were promising with the zoning because the economics of it don't work. And sadly, right now, there are a few places around the county other than downtown Bethesda and maybe downtown Silver Spring that concrete towers, which are 8 stories or higher, make economic sense. And so
I guess my question was, the county executive will tell you over and over again that increasing the percentage of MPDUs doesn't get you to where you need to go. And the preservation of the naturally occurring affordable housing doesn't really get you where you need to go. You need new development, new construction whose units are going to be affordable. And I wonder if the county is doing anything proactively to build those new units that they say we're going to need over the next 25 years.
Well, putting $140 million into affordable housing is a first step. Protecting the naturally occurring affordable housing is important so that you don't actually start backsliding. His concern about MPDUs is often, the people who are eligible. You need deeply affordable properties, and that's part of what he's been talking about with the HOC. Is how do we get back to creative ways to build deeply affordable units? I think, we have the last 4 years of this administration, considering 3.5 years with now more than 2 years spent on COVID, that some of the things he wanted to get to, some of these policy choices that you're talking about, we're now only able to have both the financial flexibility to do it and the space within the bandwidth of county government to start getting to it.
I appreciate that answer.
My humble opinion.
We don't want to take your whole evening, even though I've got a bunch of questions here. Is anybody else? I know you get paid. I know you get paid by the question. Anybody else have any questions for Rich? And let me ask you this one: if somebody else has got a question, either wave wildly or raise your hand electronically. I was just curious. We're also very interested in climate change and the county's policies to address the reduction of greenhouse gases. And I wonder, in your conversations as you were putting together the budget, and let me say right now, thank you so much for supporting refunding the Office of the People's Counsel. That's really important to us. But I was wondering, in the course of your conversations about any of these things, do people ever talk about defunding, divesting from fossil fuels in any of the county's retirement programs and just taking that out of the pension programs? Does anybody talk about divesting fossil fuels?
So thanks to the leadership of County Executive Elrich and his advocacy as a member of the County Council, the way we have dramatically reduced the amount of our holdings that are in carbon in general, because it's not just fossil fuels as we look to decarbonize our portfolio. Having been a member of the pension board, the way that Montgomery County invests its money is we don't buy stock in ExxonMobil. We buy a position within an overall larger fund. Alan Bowser and Associates comes to us and says, we're assembling $200 million from institutional investors, and we're going to be focused on medical technology. And we buy a position within that fund. And the whole idea is you hold it for 10 years or 15 years, and then the fund is liquidated and you get your ideally you get your initial investment back and all of the increased value as well as the dividends that you're getting through that investment. So because that's the way we approach things, to get out of some of those investments early comes with a penalty, just like you might say with a CD where you're putting money in for a certain period of time. You can get to it, but you're going to pay a penalty to get out of it early. So it has been a long-term goal to reduce or decarbonize the pension fund and our trust assets. We're making progress on that, and the county has an aggressive environmental, social, and governance investment policy, our ESG goals. And as a result, and I'm happy to send you or point you to our website where the trust puts out an annual report about its environmental impact and how things have changed over the last several years, so that you can see the progress that's being made. County Executive Elrich would love to say, tomorrow, decarbonized. That comes with a price that that he understands would be substantial for the trust fund, and therefore he's been providing very clear guidance as to how the trust fund will move away from its carbon holdings, so that we can get to that goal of a decarbonized trust fund.
Thanks, Rich. And then maybe this last question for the evening, which is one of the things that we care about a lot is pedestrian safety. And we've known that there's been, an increase in fatalities even during the pandemic. I don't remember seeing a bullet point in your presentation about pedestrian safety. I know that a lot of our problem areas are state highways, so that's an SHA issue, but can you tell us what the commitment is budget-wise on pedestrian safety?
For Vision Zero, yes. I think we have a chart just on that. Jerry can point you to page 78.1 in the document, is just on Vision Zero. And so you can see all of the different things that we are doing as part of Vision Zero. One of the things that it's hard to assess a number at because, all right, so the county executive recommends $120.4 million in expenditures in support of Vision Zero. The operating budget includes $46.7 million for Vision Zero initiatives, and the CIP includes the capital improvement program, $63.7 million. And they range, and you'll see if you go to that page, or if you go online to it, you'll be able to see all the different things that we're doing in order to advance Vision Zero. Now, some of that is it's not like we're not doing $120 million of just pedestrian improvements, but all of the different things that we're doing across county government that contribute to Vision Zero are contained in that short summary.
Well, thank you so much for that answer. Members, guests, does anybody have a final question for the Chief Administrative Officer?
And I would say, Alan, Bloomberg News has an interesting article out comparing and contrasting Vision Zero programs in the U.S. compared to those in Europe, and how they differ, and certainly they've been at it longer in Europe, and sort of what we need to be thinking about.
Jerry, do you want to wind us up?
Yeah, the Montgomery County Civic Federation, Inc. wants to thank Rich Madaleno for his excellent presentation and his complete and thorough knowledge of the budget. I think he's probably one of the most knowledgeable people in this state on budgets, if not the most knowledgeable person in Montgomery County.
Thank you, Rich. It wouldn't be budget season if we couldn't have a chat with you about the recommended budget. So thank you so much. I know it's a long day for you, and we'll look forward to the budget passing the county council pretty much intact. So thank you so much.
Well, so far, thank you all. So far, over the last 3 years, the council has adopted 99% of the county executive's recommendations. So obviously, we can't spend a dollar until they appropriate it, but there has been far more agreement about our priorities than one might think. I have put in the chat the link to the open budget page. And then as an example, I've put in the link to Vision Zero. So if you wanted to click on it, you could go right to what I was just talking about. But it's just instead of a book format, it's just laid out. You can actually just click on a link and get the pages, just those pages for the budget book. And that's the same, for example, with if you went to the Park and Planning Commission, as Kathleen was talking about earlier, you would be able to go right to the Maryland Capital Park and Planning Commission, go to their summary. For example, I will cut and paste and drop that link right into the chat as well. And then my final comment question, Karen, do I have your email address so I can send you the PowerPoint? Or can I just send it to Alan and he will take care of it?
You can send
Yeah.
it to me. You can send it.
Yeah,
To me.
that's fine.
And
All right.
And thanks. That was
we
just
will
me, my
post-
last question. Can I get the PowerPoint?
We will
Okay.
post it. Thanks a lot, Rich. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for letting me out early. It's only 9:20, huh?
We can keep you till 10 o'clock if you want.
No, that's- Sheldon, thank you. It's good to say hi to Lee for me. Hello, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
I